we have a company as exhibitor at the pavilion, BroadForward, who actually knows all about this and why it's also important to keep track of those 2Gs and 3Gs and every G that will still to come. And Boudewijn van der Moesdijk, your global pre-sales consultant at BroadForward, you're going to tell a little bit about why we cannot just switch off 2G and what options and opportunities there are to keep it running and why we should also do that.
It is indeed true that we have 2G, 3G, 4G and 5G networks now running around in the world. But 2G is in most countries being switched off. But operators start to discover that even if you want to switch off the 2G network in the radio part, that doesn't mean that you can switch off all of the elements in the 2G network, and that you still need this for using in roaming infrastructure. And so therefore, these decade-old systems that were designed in the 90s now still need to be running in order to keep these connections between networks in the world open and keep these connections open so that users can roam in other parts of the world where they maybe not always have 4G and 5G, but they still use 2G, 3G in combination with 4G, for example. And then you still need those old systems to be running. That's very important.
And is that then because those new systems you have, because what options do you have? Should then those old systems be replaced, or is it actually those old systems can also not replace because they will always need to use the 2G?
Well, that's a very interesting question that you have, but the old systems, they have tried to revitalize them and keep them running for a very long time now, and they're now at the point that they're basically they cannot continue on using these old systems, so they have to move to a newer platform. But the world of hardware is also changing into newer hardware systems where these old systems and the old technologies do not run under. So what BroadForward did is we took the old STP functionality and we moved it into a software-based solution so that the software can run on new virtualized hardware deployment installations, like in the cloud, on virtual machines, or in containers, as they call it right now. And that's very important to move these decade-old systems into the new world and keep them running next to the 4G, 5G, and perhaps even 6G networks that we have for tomorrow.
So does this mean you actually created some sort of it almost sounds like a magic switch where you can grow with the old technology into the new age by putting your solution in between. Do I understand that correctly?
It's not that it is in between. So it keeps the old connections open so that networks in, for example, Western Europe can communicate with networks in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in the eastern part of Europe, where they don't move so fast into 4G and 5G. But if you have roamers, users that roam from a Western network in the Netherlands or in Belgium or in France, and they go to Africa where they have a 3G, 4G network, then they get a connection using 3G and 4G, and they still have to terminate that 3G connection into the home network in the Netherlands or Belgium or France. Okay. And that's where we keep those connections open with our systems without having to keep the old systems in place. So we can move it to the cloud, we can move it into software.
All right, sounds very interesting. And so basically in not everywhere there is this availability of 4G and 5G and etc. But does it mean that at some point 2G will phase out at all, or will we always have 2G available?
No, the idea is that 2G eventually will phase out, but it can take for another decade before that is completely phased out. It is phased out in many European countries already, but again, that doesn't mean that operators can phase out everything from the 2G, 3G network. They still have to keep a few components in there, and the STP, which is one of our software functions, needs to stay into that network in order to keep those connections open.
And does this then mean that also your biggest target audience is that and then in those countries like Africa or like more remote countries where they are relying more heavily on the 2G and 3G developments, or what can you say about that?
No, they will move to 4G as well, but they started with 4G much later than we did here in Western Europe. So they're still leveraging their income out of 3G, 2G and 3G. And that's why they still have it open. And if you go to such a country, that your device will also roam in that 2G, 3G network. And therefore it needs to be terminated in your home country here.
Okay, because I also read that they are switching off certain Gs in certain countries. So why should you still invest then in this opportunity?
Yeah, very good question. So that switching off is called sunsetting. So most operators are sunsetting 2G, 3G right now. But in order to keep those connections open with the other parts of the world, they need to have those STPs in the network. And the STP is really the routing point, the traffic cop that basically manages and routes all the traffic in that 2G, 3G network. Mm-hmm. And so that needs to remain there in order for those connections to be open between the other countries.
Okay. Sounds very technical, but I can imagine, you cannot, well, it's what the topic is. You cannot just switch it off. So even if they're switching it off, you have to invest in your solution so you can still have kind of a workaround to make it possible for those applications to keep running.
Yes.
And sounds very cool. And is this also where you won where you were nominated with the GLOMO Awards with?
Yes. So we were nominated by the GSMA for the GLOMO Awards for this product. And it's very interesting to see that the GSMA recognizes the need for these 2G decade-old systems that need to be maintained running, and that we have taken the effort to move those old systems into the new software-based virtualized environments, cloud environments, and that they can continue to install and use these systems there.
Okay, and are there many companies in this area? Like, because I always have a feeling you're a little bit like a unicorn in this space. So
well, to some extent we are, but the decade-old systems, there are a number of vendors that have these decade-old systems, like the Ericssons, the Oracles, the Nokias, and they're not doing any support on these systems anymore. Mm-hmm. And we see that they become a threat in the network. They become a security threat in the network in order to continue with these old systems. And in order to mitigate that threat, because we have placed it into software which runs on modern operating systems, which run on modern hardware, modern deployment models like virtual machines and cloud-based containers, we also bring the security of these systems on par with the current 4G and 5G systems.
Well, that sounds amazing. So you have a lot of different benefits then all at once. Not only can you still have run the 2G and 3G opportunities or the applications that run on it.
Exactly.
As a workaround. And it's also even more secured.
Exactly.
So, okay.
It has the security that we are expecting for today's systems in the telecommunications.
That sounds amazing. So I can imagine that definitely puts you high on the list for becoming one of the winners tomorrow.
Well, we'll see. We're nominated, so maybe we win it. So we'll see.
So let's keep our fingers crossed for that, and we probably see you maybe then tomorrow again on the stage to celebrate the next win for Netmore, because that would be the second win then. The second win.
Yes.
But you're nominated already like 9 times or something, right?
Yeah, our product has been nominated for 9 times already, and in 2021 we also won with the same software product.
Okay.
A GLOMO award.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I think that's a great way to end the talk. And thank you so much for your inspiration. And I wish you all the best for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.